Great turnout. I see a few faces I maybe don't recognize. So if you haven't been here before, this is the Great Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve. And we are part of New Hampshire Fish and Game and also part of a national system of reserves. There's 30 reserves around the country. And then also we have a friends group that supports us too, the Great Bay Stewards. So probably you're familiar with at least one of those three things. We have a lot of programming here throughout the season, including this lecture series in the winter. And we try to get local experts come and talk about something that's related to Great Bay and just get, some more adult programming throughout the winter. And we have a lot of kids programming in the spring, summer, and fall. And so my name is Melissa. So if you've seen any of the social media posts, that would be me. And if you have any questions, more questions about who we are, I'll be around afterwards. So I'm happy to answer more of those as well. And so I just want to introduce our guest speakers. So we've got 3 today for this lecture, which is awesome. 3 awesome experts. So Lynn Vaccaro is the training and engagement coordinator here at Great Bay National Estuarine Research Reserve. And so she works with local decision makers, providing science-based resources for them to help them make their decisions. And then Melissa Paly is the Great Bay Piscataqua waterkeeper through the Conservation Law Foundation. And so she works to advocate, inform, and protect Great Bay and the coastal area all around the seacoast. And then Trevor Mattera works for PREP, Piscataqua Region Estuary Program, and he is the Habitat Program Manager. So he works with local partners on collaborative projects that help all sorts of habitats around the Piscataqua watershed. So if no one has any basic questions about who we are, I'm going to turn it over to the 3 experts.
So I'm going to kick us off. And we are really excited to share with you a story of protecting and restoring Great Bay. Melissa's going to give us a little overview of the estuary and some of the threats. Trevor is going to tell you a little bit about a new program that's really pushing us as a community of professionals to be more innovative and more proactive and more collaborative, really. And then we'll give you a couple examples of projects that we've been working on that we're just excited to share with you. So thank you for being here. So next I'm going to do something that is not usually encouraged in public events. I'm going to ask you all, if you happen to have a smartphone with you, to take it out, turn it on right now. Open up your camera and direct your camera at the QR code on the screen there. And Tess and Kara, 2 of our amazing educators here, have got extra papers. If for some reason it's not working, just... And when, well, we're going to go to a polling program. I'm going to get a little input from folks in the room. So you just click on the QR code on your screen and it should take you right to the polling program. And so I've got a couple questions for you because, engagement is part of my job description. We want to learn a little bit more about the people who are in the room. Yeah, you in? Oh, the volume. Yeah, we'll use the microphone. Thank you. All right, is that better? Good. Okay. So our first question for you, for those of you who are, once you're in the polling program, and if folks are still having trouble, just raise your hand and some folks will circulate and help you as best we can with your phone. So our first question for you is just where do you live? What town or city do you live in? Just to help us kind of see the spread of folks in the room. You'll have to kind of type in the response and then hit submit. And this is actually not connected to, we're not going to be able to connect this data to you in any particular way. That's fun. Yeah, that's fun. So a lot of folks from right here, our neighboring town of Stratham, Durham, Newmarket, Elliott, some folks from Maine. That's great. South Berwick and Kittery. Nice. Well, thank you. So the next question, I'm going to just keep moving here, is to see kind of what your water address is. Type in the name of kind of the water body that's most important or most connected to you and your community.
You can't spell it.
Yeah, no worries if you can't spell it. Again, it's all anonymous. Right, where's River, Lamprey, Piscataqua, I can never spell Piscataqua either.
Wait, leave that for a second. Oh, before the.
Little River, Merrimack, Pepperell Cove.
Wait, you go.
Yeah, it's just so nice to see kind of where people are coming from and what water body really connects with you on a personal level. Even though, of course, we're all part, at least as far as I can tell, from the information I've seen so far, that we're all part of the same watershed, whole section of land that all drains to the coastal region here in New Hampshire, and in most cases flows through Great Bay, which of course is the estuary that is most important to today's conversation. So I just have a couple other polling questions for you, if you will humor me here. So of course, this is our coastal watershed. That's really important to all of our work. 52 coastal towns, over 400,000 people live here, and 7 major rivers, but then lots and lots of other creeks and lakes and bays, as we saw in the responses. So again, just to kind of see what level of familiarity we have in this room here. Respond to this question here. How many miles inland do the tidal waters from the ocean flow into the inland region here of New Hampshire? You can see the scale there, 0 to 40.
You're gonna slide it, grab it to what you think it is.
Yeah, and then hit submit and it'll pop up there.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you got answers all over the place, and I can't see exactly where those big peaks are. But you will know how well you did when I give you the answer here in a minute. So here's kind of map of how far inland the tidal waters go here in the Great Bay region, and you can see in some cases all the way 22 miles, all the way into downtown Exeter, 18 miles to the head of tide in Newmarket where the dam is, 15 miles to the head of tide in Dover where there's a kind of a dam and falls there. So the tidal waters reach really far inland, and you know, that has implications for things like this. This is a photo here taken here on our boardwalk in the big storms last January. That the big storm surge that hit a lot of regions also came all the way in through Great Bay, through the Piscataqua, and overtopped our boardwalk, which we almost never see here. And so, next kind of fun fact question here: how long is the tidal shoreline in New Hampshire? And of course, this is something that's near and dear to our hearts because it's a source of pride. If you've got a long shoreline, a short shoreline, it affects funding and things. I'll give you just another minute there to respond. Those of you who are playing along, thanks to those of you who are. It looks like about half and half here in the room. Good information for me. And so you may know the number more like, 18, 17 miles of shoreline. That's a common number that's referenced here for New Hampshire, where we've got a tiny shoreline. But if you include all of the reach of our in through the Great Bay, in through the Hampton-Seabrook estuary, up into the tidal reaches of all of our rivers, you get a number that's much larger, 326 miles of tidal shoreline. And so that's the part of the region that we are really, really invested in trying to protect here. And so our last question for you before I pass it over to Melissa is to just kind of get a read from people in your room. What do you see as the biggest issues facing our rivers, our lakes, our bays, our coast here in this coastal region of New Hampshire? And you can just kind of type in whatever's top of mind. Don't overthink it. And I think the responses will they'll just pop up on the screen. And this will be kind of my segue here to kind of pass it to Melissa, who's typing in her own responses. You want to come on up, Melissa?
Oh, yeah.
I got stormwater runoff, pollution, nitrogen.
The rules, I typed in my own response, not one of the.
Oh, no, yeah, it's an open response.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Climate change, flooding, fertilizers.
I think this is really fun.
Yeah. Oh, yes, I got a flip flop. Thank you. So thank you for that. Do you want to say anything before I switch over?
No, just that. I hope you guys found that an entertaining way to actually use your phones. during a talk and not have to silence it. Well, of course, you could still silence it, but anyway, thank you, Lynn, for teeing us up, for our talk here about the Great Bay 2030 initiative. And we're gonna get to what that is all about and give you some examples of some of the projects that we're doing through Great Bay 2030. But before we can talk about Great Bay 2030, I thought we should talk about Great Bay. And give you a little sense of my view as the waterkeeper and what some of the most important issues are that we're dealing with here, and why the opportunity that we have through New Hampshire Charitable Foundation and Great Bay 2030 is such a cool thing. So we are looking, let's see, actually, anyone want to guess what this view is? What are we looking, what's in the lower right corner? Anyone have some ideas? Just shout it out if you know where this view is.
Hilton Park.
It is not Hilton Park. We're actually looking right at the mouth of the Oyster River in Durham, looking out across to Fox Point in Newington. And in the far, under the strut of the wing, we're seeing Route 16, the bridge over the Bellamy River. And then the long stretch of the Piscataqua River going down toward the open ocean, Newcastle, Portsmouth, Kittery on the left side, Portsmouth on the right, and of course the big airstrip is the Pease trade port. So that's that view. And you know, Great Bay is an extremely convoluted, complicated place, and some of our water quality problems are because of this convoluted thing. And my job as waterkeeper, which you may or may not agree is really the coolest job title in the world, and also just a cool job because it comes with a boat. So that's pretty neat. But what do I do as waterkeeper? I work with an organization, a New England-wide environmental advocacy organization called Conservation Law Foundation. Has been at the forefront of many major environmental battles in New England for more than 50 years. And my job here as waterkeeper, and we work all across New England, but my role here is really to be the voice of the waterways here in the Seacoast region, and to try to turn around some very long-standing pollution problems that we've had because of growth and land use change. So some of my time I do spend doing really cool things like holding baby osprey. I mean, like, that was one of the high points of my life. I kid you not. And
Right here.
right here at Great Bay with, I have to say, Bob Kennedy, who passed away, was such an amazing wildlife bird ecologist. And anyway, that was a really remarkable opportunity. Other things I do, some of are in the water, and a lot of that in the water stuff is really led by Trevor Mattera, who's going to talk to you next. Some of the stuff is cleaning up really nasty trash and making a terrible mess in my boat, but it cleans up good. And then, you know, just being out on the water for all kinds of different reasons. That is one of that's one side of what a waterkeeper does. But a lot of the work is maybe a little bit less glamorous. I don't know if you call being in the water, looking at green crabs and algae that glamorous, but at any rate, a lot of the work is in communities, and it's really working with local decision makers, city and town councils, conservation commissions, planning boards, who are making decisions every night of every week that are going to either be helpful or not to water quality here in the Great Bay region. I work with community groups, in this case, a group of Durham residents who were trying to secure funding to remove the Mill Pond Dam in Durham. I work with community groups and activists in communities all around the region on all kinds of issues that are going to improve the health of the region. And so how do we decide what the health of the waterways is? What's the what's the basis, the science, the scientific basis for the work I do as an advocate? It really all ties back to a couple of things. One is the report that comes out every 3 to 5 years from the Piscataqua Region Estuaries Partnership. Again, the organization that Trevor works with. And PrEP is a collaborative, a lot of UNH researchers who are spending a lot of time monitoring the health of all kinds of different aspects of water quality. And every 3 to 5 years put out this report called State of Our Estuaries, the most recent one being in 2023. And it have been doing this for, I think, since the late 90s. So we have now a fairly long-term data set on whether we're doing better or worse every couple of years. And it is this sort of assessment, the doctor's report, if you will, that drives the advocacy that I do as waterkeeper. And I will not try to talk you through this very complicated diagram here, but it's an example of how we think about things that are doing well. Those are the positive changes we're seeing in blue, the things that are going very poorly in red, and the biggest set of stressors and indicators, which are the things in yellow, where we have cautionary trends, things aren't looking great, and we know we need to do a lot more work. And so I focus an awful lot on several of those indicators in yellow. And I'm going to talk just for an instant about eelgrass, because that is one of the things that we focus on here. And eelgrass is, as you all probably know, is the foundational plant in estuaries like the Great Bay. The estuaries, again, this place where freshwater and saltwater meet. Twice a day, tides moving in and out. Eelgrass is the plant that is should be most dominant in estuaries like the Great Bay. Not just in Great Bay, eelgrass grows all around the world in estuaries, but we used to have meadows, vast meadows of eelgrass throughout the Great Bay estuary. And this is such an important plant because it provides habitat for juvenile fish and shellfish. It sequesters a huge amount of carbon. It produces a lot of oxygen, and oxygen in the water is what everything else needs to live. And it holds a lot of the sediment in place on the bottom, which is particularly important in a tidal system like ours, where we have winds and strong currents just constantly moving in and out. So the rhizomes of these plants hold sediment in place. And then lastly, these plants use up the stuff in the water to grow. And so we focus on eelgrass a lot as sort of like the canary in the coal mine. Look, if eelgrass is doing well, we're pretty sure that things are looking pretty healthy. And when eelgrass is not doing well, we kind of know that we have problems. And that is where we are in the Great Bay Estuary. We have problems. We've lost more than half of the eelgrass in the estuary that we've had since the 90s, where we do still have eelgrass. Much of it is thin, it has some disease. We have areas where we have lots of algae proliferating that make it very hard for the eelgrass to thrive. And in places we get algal blooms like this. This is Spruce Creek in Kittery, which from time to time has these just terrible algal blooms. And, you know, that is the situation that we're dealing with. It changes from year to year. Some years are good years for eelgrass, some years are very bad years. But we've had more bad years than good years for the past couple of decades. And one of the reasons that we believe is a big stressor for eelgrass is the amount of nitrogen in the water. And so I'm going to show you a little bit here about where all this nitrogen is coming from. It's coming from us. Okay, that's the spoiler alert. About a third of it is coming from wastewater treatment. We have 18 wastewater facilities in our Great Bay region. Some of them are quite large: Portsmouth, Dover, Rochester. 4 to 5 million gallons every day of sewage, effluent going into our rivers and eventually down into the estuary and out to the open ocean. But we have been making a lot of progress in recent years, largely due to the advocacy of, I will say, Conservation Law Foundation, to upgrade wastewater treatment and to require stricter permits so that these facilities are dumping less nitrogen and other things into the Piscataqua River or the Cachiko River or the Salmon Falls River and so on and so forth. So we have been making some very good strides in the area of wastewater treatment. We still have more work to do. Towns like Epping, are going to be facing a bond this year to begin upgrading their poorly performing plant. Others have made tremendous investments, Portsmouth, Newmarket, Exeter, Newington, and others. So the area where we're not doing as well is in dealing with the other 2/3, all that stuff in yellow. That is called non-point source pollution. And what does that mean? That is the nitrogen and other stuff that is running off the land because of the way we use our land. And you can begin to see in the other pie chart there that we have all kinds of issues. We have lots of lawn fertilizers being used on not just big homes like this that happen to be right on the water with no buffer, so whatever gets put on that lawn, in the next rain is apt to run right down into the Cachiko River. And I'm sorry if that is somebody's house in this room. I don't, you never know. But at any rate, nitrogen from lawn care and phosphorus as well are big problems. A little bit of these types of fertilizers are very effective. Plants need them for growth. But when we put too much on the land and it runs off in a rain event, the algae in the water think, yum, this is great. They grow like crazy and they begin that process that I showed you with algal blooms and so on. We have about 440,000 people living around our communities. I'm just guessing we probably have tens of thousands of dogs. I myself have one. I am very careful about picking up after him, and there is a reason for that because dog waste is a source of pollution. We have tens of thousands of septic systems in our region. Again, my house is on a septic system. About half of the people who live in our watershed are connected to public sewer. About half are on septic systems, and septic systems do a very good job at keeping bacteria from getting into your drinking water well, but they do not do anything to mitigate the nitrogen and phosphorus that is in high concentrations in human waste. So that goes right into the aquifer. At the biggest source, however, is what happens every time it rains. And I ask you to just look around next time you go to, a shopping mall or a supermarket, just look at the parking lot and see how many storm drains they are. Once you begin to look at storm drains, you can never not see them. They are everywhere. And there are, again, tens of thousands of storm drains. Every time it rains, whatever has, been, it has collected on these paved surfaces, including all the nitric oxides that come down in rain because it's up there from combustion of fossil fuels. That stuff all runs down the pavement. It can no longer soak into soil, into forested soils. It runs into storm drains where it receives no treatment, and it's conveyed as quickly as possible into our rivers and bays. So, we have still an incredibly beautiful area here that we live. We're so fortunate. We have all these beautiful rivers and bays, and yet, because of our land use patterns and development and growth and lack of, thought about what happens to water, we have inadvertently really created a lot of havoc in our estuary and our rivers. So, the work of the water keeper is to pay attention to what's happening at the local, state, and federal level, and to really organize and advocate and energize people in their communities to step up and pay attention to what's happening at planning boards and city and town council meetings so that we make better choices about how we use the land. So that's a little bit about the estuary, what some of our issues are. And I really want to turn it over now to talk about the cool stuff that we're doing to address some of these primary problems that we see through this Great Bay 2030 initiative. So here's Trevor.
Great, thanks, Melissa. That was awesome. I can use this little guy if I want to, so I can walk around. I'm a walker when I'm a talker. So I think that sets it up really, really well. I would say that, as you can see, we have this great, beautiful, complex natural system here in our area. The Great Bay, Hampton Seaburg, it's just beautiful estuaries that we really treasure here. We also have a lot going on, right? As we can see, there's just huge amounts of stressors. There's development, there's a lot going on that we need to do stuff about. The great news is that there's a tremendous amount of people like all of you all in here that really care about what's going on. You wouldn't be here, I don't think, if you didn't care. You probably have something better to do. There's also a great many people that are in the system that are doing great work. And I can tell you that I love working with each and every one of them. All the folks here at GBNERR, Conservation Law Foundation, all of the entities that are doing great work here are just awesome. And we all, I can tell you very honestly, play very nice in the sandbox together. It's a very small system, as you, I mean, yeah, we threw up the 300 miles of tidal shoreline, but really we're a really little small pocket of New England over here. But we all really do play very collaboratively and do great work together. So to kick off this conversation of what Great Bay 2030 is, which I know is the question running through everyone's mind right now, I want to take you on a little path back into time to this year 2015, which feels like 800 years ago. The New Hampshire Charitable Foundation basically came to a group of partners at that time and said, what can you do collaboratively in a formal way as part of like a collective impact project with a little bit of funding? So some of our partners at the director level came together, rose to the challenge and said, let's find out. So there were five, make sure I get the right button. Heck yeah. Five organizations that came together and they formed what we know now as the Great Bay 2020. And really what that was it came together and it wrote up a strategy and a vision around different buckets of action around the Great Bay and finding collaboration and moving the needle forward there. There was a little bit of funding that went forward and there were some great projects that got funded along the way. Some of you might be aware of the Every Drop social media platform that was launched around that time. Teachers on the Estuary is also another program that came out of here at GBNERR that got some funding, and there was many others. And we did some great work. I happen to be a coordinator for a number of years for Great Bay 2020, which is why I know so much about it right now. I can tell you all. And there was great work done there. There was a lot of collaboration. Again, those directors came together. They got to talk about what was happening. They got to align the ships and said, like, we are going to make real action happen here. And we did that for 5 years. And then 2020 came and they said, that was great. Now what? And Charitable came back to the table too and said, like, well, what's next? What's the next big thing? And we all came together and really dug in and said, like, what was good over those last 5 years and what could we change? One of the things that we really decided right away was we needed much more action from the ground up. While it was great to have those heads of these organizations really thinking strategically and in sync with each other, we really needed everyone that was like on the ground, boots on the ground, thinking in the same kind of way. And to that end, we went back to the drawing board envisioning, and we came up with this, the next iteration of Great Bay 2030. And you can see it's quite a bit different here, but I'll point out quickly some of the similarities. Do I have a laser? No, that's okay. I don't need a laser. Right in the middle here, you can see a steering committee made up of the same organizations. And I can tell you also that New Hampshire Sea Grant also came to the table as well. So again, we have that hub of core partners that are really helping drive the ship. But on top of that, once those goals were around things like land protection, habitat restoration, environmental stewardship, things like that. We really wanted to build those up. And so what we did was we created work groups around those, headed by work group chairs, of which the three of us are actually members and co-chairs of different work groups. And we brought those stakeholders and folks doing the work to the table. And we said, this is great. This is the visioning. And I can tell you that New Hampshire Charitable really stepped up too. And they found a donation of $12 million over the next 5 years to help fund this. And I can say that that was an absolute game changer, because that amount of money brought people to the table. And now we could really sit and say, what are those projects that we need to prioritize and move forward to really move the needle? So that is really where we're setting the stage here. 2 of the 5 work groups I should mention, we're actually leveraging work groups that have actually been around in this area for some time and are doing absolutely excellent work. For climate, and the climate bucket there, we have New Hampshire Coastal Adaptation Work Group. As hopefully many of you are aware of CAW. They do excellent work, a stakeholder group focused on climate adaptations and climate effects. And for land protection, which is also another big goal and aspect of our work, we're really leaning on the great work of the Great Bay Research Protection Partnership, which again offers small grants and brings together land protection and conservation organizations to do the work that they do. So again, this was really setting the groundwork for Great Bay 2030. And I can tell you, having worked now we're going on year 4 now. We're really going to year 4. It's crazy. It's been excellent. I mean, really bringing together all these partners who see the ownership of the work they're doing, really see the prioritization and leveraging and lifting up of these projects that really help move the needle in this area. It's been excellent, and I'm really looking forward to the next phase of this work. With that said, all the admin is now out of the way, and now we can all share some of the exciting projects that we've all been working on. And because I set up the timing of this, I don't have to go to sit back down. I have the first project I get to talk to you about. So let's keep moving. So I am the co-chair of the habitat restoration work group, as you might have guessed. I help co-chair. My co-chair with that is Brianna Groot from Nature Conservancy, and the 2 of us are actually killing it over there in the habitat restoration work group. So if anyone knows of any other dollars they want to ship towards a good cause, you know where to find me. I wanted to talk to you about one of the projects that we actually got funded that I'm pretty excited about, which was restoring fish passage into the Bayview River, and specifically adaptively managing what was a dam removal and restoration in that river. So the Bayview River in Dover, which I'll show you in just a little bit on a map, but I don't want to spoil the next slide, has really been passing diadromous fish, so fish that move up and down the river, back to the ocean and into fresh water for hundreds of years. Fish like river herring, American eel, Atlantic salmon, when we had them, all made that the home and was all migrating back and forth and had free reign. That was until around the 1800s. And so over the last couple hundreds of years, when we actually started damming up the river at a pretty significant pace. And in this specific area, there was actually 5 major blockages and dams over just over a mile stretch of river. Work on actually removing those and restoring that stretch of river started around early 2000s. I think 2004 is when we actually started taking those things out. And there were 2 here in Sawyer Mill, which actually I think Lynn has provided some lovely historical drawings of, that there were actually 2, the lower and upper Sawyer Mill dams that was taken out in 2019 and 2020 respectively. So at the time, when you take a dam out, you think, well, great, we did it. The water's flowing, there's nothing holding it back. Step 1 done. Pat ourselves on the back, and you're absolutely right. Step 1 is done, and that's a great thing when we can take a dam out, because it's a lot of work. There it is. There's the next slide. Yeah, so you can see up there where I'm talking about in the star, the top of the Bayview River there. And this was the upper dam at the time, and you can see the removal down in the bottom left here. And the restored river on the bottom right. So again, that was happening around 2019, 2020. Those got taken out, and all is well, right? Unfortunately, one of the goals of this thing, as we know, is to restore this habitat for the creatures and critters that actually use it. In this case, a lot of our fish. So even though there's water running pretty regularly, the question becomes, are fish actually using this habitat? So once you start looking into what's happened, and I don't know if you can read that too well, but I'll help read that for you. You have a strange kind of situation that happens under this old mill building here. In that there's granite piers that are actually bisecting the river as it flows under this structure. And what that does is up in the top right, you can see it creates these zones of passage, as we call them, ZOPs. ZOP 1 and ZOP 2, which sounds like something out of Dr. Seuss, but I assure you it's engineering terms. So zone of passage number 1, which is river right, which you can see in the green stripe up there, is a bedrock channel with a max jump of about 16 inches, so just over a foot. And the one in red, the ZOP2, is actually a max jump of 30 inches. Most of the water is being funneled through there into the red. And when there is enough water, it creates that zone of passage 1 in the green. Unfortunately, that is very variable. So when it starts drying up, you'll start losing that passage. So again, you can see that not only is it creating these 2 passages that fish have to decide on, but it has 2 different heights of jumping. So say, okay, well, 16 inches, 30 inches. I'm really used to like fish that can really hop up a waterfall, right? We're all used to watching those documentaries of like the salmon leaping up into the bear's mouths. And you're like, that's at least 40 or 50 feet. Unfortunately, that's really not the fish we're dealing with here. The fish we're really concerned about here are our river herring, which I'm just going to tell you, they're really not jumpers. Our minimum jump for a river herring is probably about 6 inches. They're really kind of lazy fish. And because of that, we have to start thinking about how would the fish want to navigate up a system like this, right? So what we can do is, now that we know how the river is reacting to the dam removal itself, and what these mechanics are looking like as the river is going under these structures, we can start playing with it a little bit. So on the right, what you see is some construction that actually happened in 2019 and 2020 when the dam was being removed. And so what's happening is, rather than just having a straight shot of water down the pipeline, you put these boulders in to create some kind of a riffle and pool effect, to create these refuges that the fish can like make it to. It's a little gold, they're going to go up this little tiny waterfall. It reduces the jump height, and they can make it to the pool and take a little breather, because again, lazy fish. On the left here, you actually see what the draft engineering was for this project. And the project itself, again, was actually funding us going back to this completed dam restoration and putting more money in and adaptively managing it to make sure that the fish had a happy trip up through the falls and could traverse that waterway. And here is my final slide, basically showing the work that just got finished this last fall of those riffles and pools being created. You can see the yellow dots are located along boulders that were moved into place following the engineering designs. And the little blue outlines are trying to convey basically the little riffle and pool effects that we're trying to create here for the fish as they move up. And hopefully this spring, with the help of folks from Coastal Program and New Hampshire Fish and Game, we'll see some happy fish move right up through those pools up into the river, and the success of our project. So with that, I thank you, and I'm going to pass it back along to.
Yeah. Thanks, Trevor. Good storytelling too. Oh, shoot.
Mike died.
I think, yeah.
Yeah. So,
This guy's with batteries.
I'll just note, I know a number of people in the room here who are part of the Great Bay Stewards group, the nonprofit that supports the reserve. They actually had a role in all 3 of the projects that you're gonna hear from today. And they actually managed the money for the project that Trevor just shared with you. In part because, Charitable wanted to give the money to a nonprofit, not to a for-profit entity. And so we provided we could provide some oversight for that project and allow it to be fundable through New Hampshire Charitable. So I just wanted to put that little shout out. It's a kind of underappreciated role of the Great Bay Stewards is managing the money sometimes for different partners. So I'm going to share a different project with you. Actually pretty different. This one's about people, not fish, but hopefully also of interest to folks in the room. This is a program we call the Great Bay Changemaker Program. It's a program that I lead with Melissa and with Katri Hillman, who's also in the room. If you want to just wave Katri, she's our fantastic program manager. So get in touch with any of us if you want to learn a little bit more about this program. But it's really all about trying to build a community of water champions all throughout the watershed. And of course, there's lots of ways to be a water champion, including, volunteering here and all the other opportunities around the seacoast. But we're actually really focused on civic engagement and political engagement. And I'll just start by sharing a little story of how I kind of came to realize the importance of this citizen engagement with these environmental issues in political spaces. A big part of my role is really about working with municipal leaders and natural resource professionals and consultants and different types of folks who have kind of a formal, kind of paid role in environmental issues. But, in some cases, I think we need to go broader with the kind of the folks that we work with. So this is a story from Dover. And a number of different natural resource professionals, including all 3 of our organizations, actually, as well as DES and UNH, had worked for several years, actually, with the city of Dover to really help them think hard about their stormwater infrastructure. As Melissa shared, that's a big source of pollution to Great Bay. Pipes and detention basins and storm drains are all aging, causing all sorts of problems, both flooding problems as well as water pollution problems. And so folks, really worked with the city of Dover to try to understand those issues and what the options were. And after, lots of analyses and meetings and collaborations, really kind of thought they had pretty strong support for kind of a new funding mechanism to try to make some improvements in the stormwater infrastructure. But as is not an unusual story, when it came time for city council to, host their public hearings and to have their vote, some opposition emerged just enough that city council, got cold feet and in the end didn't pass that particular proposal. And so really brought to light to me the importance of really making sure that we're kind of very coordinated in our engagement with both political leaders as well as with community members themselves. And it's a really ripe opportunity. Ooh, just die again. I wonder, do you mind, Melissa? Thank you. So really, we actually have a really unique opportunity here with this Great Bay 2030 initiative because we can work so easily across our organizations and with very unique funding sources like New Hampshire Charitable. We can do this type of work. I mean, of course, me as a state agency employee here at the reserve, I can only go so far, right, when it comes to talking about environmental issues. But Melissa has a completely different role. And, so we can kind of really work together, I think. So how do we do this? How do we get folks to be more civically engaged? We really believe that, oh, excellent. Thank you, Melissa. That it's, I can also just shout too. What we see over and over again, not really working, huh? I can speak a little louder, I think, while we figure that out. Thank you, Melissa. But we've seen over and over again, right? It's that the voices of voters and it's the personal stories of voters. That's really sometimes the best way to get the attention of our leaders. And so how do we do that? How do we help people do that? So what I'm going to do is invite you to take out your cell phones again. Humor me, please. Because this is actually information that would be really helpful to me and to Melissa and to Katri. Just a couple more questions for you. So if you need the instructions to join again, it's there on the screen. It should already come up on your phone if you were participating in the poll the first time, but if you need to join again, there it is. Oh shoot, sorry, let me tick through these. My bad, yeah. All right. So my first question for you is, you'll see on the screen, hopefully, a set of actions. And I'd like you to just respond. Which of these have you personally done at some point in your life to help support an issue that you cared about? Could be water, could be something completely different. We know environmental issues are all interconnected with so many other issues. Yeah, at least one person in the room who's run for office. Kudos to you. Thank you for doing that. Quite a few people who have served in municipal committees and boards, probably planning boards and conservation commissions. I think I know who a couple of you are in the room. A lot of people have spoken at public meetings. Voted, excellent, thank you. Putting up signs, using social media. And then quite a few people, I love this one here, in green there, talk to somebody with different views about an issue that I care about. I feel like that's an underappreciated thing that takes actually a fair amount of effort to kind of start those difficult conversations with people. I know I rarely do it with some of my in-laws that I'd like to engage more. Just to be candid. Yeah, so thank you for sharing that. It's really fun to see, right? This is hard work. And I think as Melissa can attest, it is not easy to speak up and to kind of to take a stand on some of these difficult issues. It's hard sometimes to even like know what the right stand is too. Let's just acknowledge that. So my next question for you is what would it take to help you get more involved with a water issue that you care about? And should just assume that this is a situation where you do want to get more involved. What would be helpful to you? I told you the kind of the goal of this program that we've been leading is to support a community of water champions. What does that actually mean? What type of support would actually be helpful? So it looks like tools are helpful. Some of those like online ballots and letter, online sort of automatic signatures. A group of people to work with pops out is a important one here in red. More information about the issue, more confidence in my skills, and optimism. It sounds like we already have a fair amount of optimism in the room. I appreciate that. And I'm hoping that's why that one's a little bit smaller. Yeah, this is super interesting, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I will say that all of these things are kind of near and dear to kind of our heart and our thinking about this program that we've been refining over the last 2 years. And so I'll just tell you a little bit more about that now. I'm going to switch back to the other screen. Let me do this. So of course, there's lots of different ways to get involved, as we mentioned. And really, our goal here is to kind of support people at all different points in that spectrum, whatever it is that we have to give, knowing that right now I serve on a conservation commission in my community, and it is time consuming, and I've also got young kids, I work. It is not something that everybody wants to spend their time doing, or can do at every stage of their life. But wouldn't it be great if we can kind of support people where they're at? So this is kind of a little diagram that's desperately needs some graphic design help, Amy. I'm looking at you, so don't look too carefully at the graphic. But really, this is just sort of a framework that I found helpful, and as we've been designing this program, in thinking about what is it that people need to be civically engaged around water issues, right? You need some passion, community, time, some things that are just kind of a foundation there that I may or may not be able to provide, right? And then those boxes in yellow are some of the things that we've been really trying to kind of feed into this program. More information about the issues, more background about the ecosystem and how it works, connections. That really popped out as an important thing in the poll that we did, that group of people to work with. Some skills and confidence around some of these kind of advocacy skills, like speaking at a public meeting, personal and emotional support, and opportunities for action are all kind of things that we aspire to kind of bring and offer to people. And our hope is that, bubbling up there out of the soup are some of those civic engagement behaviors we want to see. So these are the goals of the Changemaker program: to provide some information, build skills and confidence, and to really create a community of champions. And you can see some familiar faces on that photo there. Again, Katri and Melissa, but also I'll note that Kate and Gary, who are here in our second row, also participated in the program this past year. And I don't see anybody else, but I apologize if I'm missing anybody. This is the program that we called it our Changemaker Boot Camp. So it was kind of an intensive 4 sessions spread over the course of 8 weeks. Joe helped us with a number of the sessions, thank you. They were in the evening, different locations around the watershed. We focused on the Lamprey River, so we hosted our sessions in Epping and Newmarket primarily. The fourth one was here. And then focused on a range of issues from kind of local government, state government, advocacy campaign strategies, and then more background on water issues. Here's just a few pictures of what that looked like. Panel discussions with local leaders, some different, interactive exercises around listening and around kind of designing, kind of interventions. And then we did a little bit of field component too, some walks, a visit to a wastewater treatment plant, which is and the Wiswall Dam, which is what's in that picture there. And so I'll just say that, that we wrapped up kind of our second year, again, because of the unique nature of the charitable foundation and Great Bay 2030, we can kind of evolve the program each year. So in our third year, here in 2025, we're expanding it a little bit more beyond just that kind of fall boot camp program. We are going to launch another fall boot camp. September 11th is our target for our first session. We've already kind of nailed that down, which is great. Thank you, Katri. And then we'll also have kind of a variety of other programs this year. Changemaker chats, kind of short panel discussions about issues that are of interest to folks, and then various kind of field components over the summer, walks and talks at nature centers and some interesting other sites around the seacoast that we think are important for environmental issues. So I encourage everybody to kind of sign up to get announcements if any of this sounds of interest. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Melissa, and if there's anything else you want to say about Changemaker and let you kind of transition to the next project example.
Thank you, Lynn. Yeah, I'm so jazzed about the Changemaker program, and it's the kind of project that we never would have had the opportunity to develop. We would not have had this opportunity had all of these organizations not come together, thought strategically and collectively and collaboratively about what kinds of innovative programs would really move. I hate that expression all the time, move the needle, but I mean, we need champions and folks that are willing to speak out in their communities on sometimes very difficult issues. And there are very systematic ways to train people, to build confidence, to give skills, to help people become those kinds of advocates. And so anyway, I could not be more excited about this program, and again, just I think a very concrete example of what a remarkable opportunity Great Bay 2030 has been for all of us here in the region. I'm going to talk about one other sort of dream come true that Great Bay 2030 has enabled, and that is the launch of a shared communications platform for all of the partner groups that are working around the region on issues having to do with water, estuaries, ecosystem health, climate resilience, and so on. And that this beautiful new website and a whole host of related communications platforms just launched in August. And we're really creating a new brand that all of us can be part of, and we're calling it 7 Rivers to the Coast. And so if you go to that website, and I'm not going to try to actually live link to it just because it might be technically difficult, but it's a really, really awesome website that was more than 2 years in the making, with all kinds of planning and scoping sessions and trying to understand what the communications needs are of each of the partner organizations so that we're not all trying to shout our message by ourselves. We're teaming together to build new audiences, to give folks in the region an easy portal, an easy way to come, to learn, to explore, and to protect. So that is the idea of 7 Rivers to the Coast, protecting the shared waterways of Great Bay and beyond. And if you do go to this site, you'll see that there's we're very simple. We want to help people learn to explore and enjoy the region, and then to protect it. So under the Explore drop-down menu, we have little bits of information about each of the 7 tidal rivers. There is a really marvelous interactive map where you can zoom in and find places to launch your boat, or to take a hike, or to walk your dog, or to have a picnic. So that is a really terrific, and an interactive map that will continue to build out no matter where you are in the region. And then if you go to the protect area, you'll find all kinds of ways to be involved. What can you do at your home, around your property, to be a better steward? How can you get involved in your community? What can you do at the state level? And then become a change maker. We have a terrific calendar, so if you ever want to know what's going on, oh, a Bayview lecture series, take care of that. I think I'd like to go to that today. Oh, good, 2 o'clock, perfect. This is a comprehensive list of all kinds of events, talks, walks, and so on, going on around the region. And you can even find out about the Changemaker program. So we have a Facebook page for those of you on Facebook. We have an Instagram for folks who use Instagram. And then most importantly, we have a quarterly newsletter. The first issue went out in the fall. We have another issue going out in a few weeks. And so sign up. If you go to that link and sign up, you will get the newsletter. So if you have something that you want to share, events or blogs or columns that you've written or whatever, send them to our communications manager of Seven Rivers to the Coast, Bree Gleason. She's terrific. And help us spread the word about this new resource and use it to explore and to protect. So that's just another example of an exciting project that we've been able to develop through the Great Bay 2030 initiative. I think
We can kind of open it up for a
We're
few
kinda-
questions if we have.
yeah,
Well, I'll save you the last polling question because it's getting a little late. So we could just go on to the questions slide, I guess. Melissa, do you want to kind of help us kind of manage the time here? I know we're like getting close to the top of the hour, but I think we're committed to sticking around for a little bit longer.
And if you have to leave right at 3, just, make your exit. It's okay. No judgment.
Yeah,
But yeah, definitely ask questions.
I can just stand up.
yeah, please do.
Several of us in here, we help out with the education program for the elementary school kids. If I could get each one of you just to give a one-liner, if you were to be leading one of those groups, what is the one thing that you would tell a group of first, second, third graders that they could do to help with this initiative?
great
I'm looking for tips for myself to help my program, to be able to say, I heard from experts and they said, this is what you can do to help.
Yeah, I love it. I love that question. It feels like I can offer an answer.
Put you on the spot. Hey, I'll start the conversation. I guess
Yeah.
one thing that I always do is when I'm looking at the groups that are coming in, I look to see what community they're coming from. I see what watershed they're in, and I try to connect Great Bay back to their home. Say, you just got on a bus for an hour to come here, but what you do at home affects this area here. So if you have anything that you would like to share, I would love tips for that. Or if not today, but children's resources. A lot of what you shared there was things that kids, adults can do, but what can kids do?
I would say, maybe, many kids love bugs and butterflies and caterpillars and things like that. So maybe it's to kind of look around their own home and think, where could they plant plants that would be good for, I guess, it'd be sort of a backhanded way of trying to get their families away from green lawns that require fertilizers and pesticides, right? So maybe, can we take a little corner of a yard or in front of the house or whatever and make it a little pollinator garden?
Yeah, I dovetail with that too, because my son's about that age and I'm trying to think of what I would tell him. Honestly, what I would tell him would probably mirror what I would tell almost anyone that came up to me. I would say, start small, start local. There's a lot of things you can do at just within your own small bubble that really can make a difference. And the more you do and the more empowering that is, the easier it is to take that step into the next level of that. And I think kids can, engage with that just as easily as adults can.
Yeah, I love both those ideas too, and even just the concept, right, of like a storm drain goes into the river, which goes into the ocean, just that fish are so important. And I also have, kind of elementary age kids. I think the thing I've been trying to do is to like bring a bag with me when we go into the woods or go anywhere, in nature and just like pick up trash. I mean, it's so small, but it's so impactful and it's so easy and it's so clear that you're helping. And you can kind of reinforce where that would have gone if you hadn't picked it up.
Great,
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other kind of questions or ideas? Yeah.
I live in Portsmouth and only as a result of this summer, I become really aware of the green crab problem. And they're just destroying the marshy areas. And most people don't even realize it's happening. It seems like it's happening slowly, but there are areas around my house where there's 6 feet of collapsed seagrass and marshy. And I have no idea what effect they're having on eelgrass or any of the other things that are going on in the Great Bay.
Yeah. Yeah, so our marshes are being, I know, right? Marshes are being hit by so many stressors right now, right? Sea level rise, obviously. Do you want to speak to that, Trevor? Or I also see Chris, our research coordinator, might.
Or do you want to talk to him?
Sure, I can just yell, So, markers are facing a lot of different challenges, but trying to make this short. Green crabs actually isn't one of them. It's more like sea level rise. There are some burrowing crabs that are moving in. That are just kind of low numbers. Fiddler crab, they burrow. They have been kind of shown to be correlated with loss of marsh. It's really just sea level rise that's kind of instigating that, so the plants kind of drought. Bring it back to green crabs, there's some issues with like shellfish, with oyster, with clams, with other crabs. There's also a blue crab that's coming in too. The climate changes. Well, Gulf of Maine is the fastest warming body of water in the world. So we're kind of trying to see what those two crab species are doing to mostly shellfish, but also habitats. And also the green crabs could have an effect, and have Trevor could speak to this too, on seagrass beds, more so the marshes, and same with blue crabs.
Yeah, I would echo all of that. And when it's specifically with seagrass, I think they are a stressor on the grass, but it's probably not one of our biggest issues that we're dealing with, especially in the Great Bay system. And unfortunately, even if they were, there's not really an answer to them at this point. I saw there was great stories going on about sea otters out on the west, eating them all up, which is great. So maybe if anyone knows any sea otter breeders, they can like get in touch with them. But until then, it's something you're just gonna have to deal with and just keep an eye on, really.
Except that there's a lot of research going on around how to, whether they could be harvested. They do molt, they are edible when they're soft shells. They're actually very delicious. I've had green crab sliders, they're fabulous. But getting finding an efficient way to harvest green crabs when they're soft shell is tricky. There's some really interesting work going on in York and in Brave Boat Harbor and in Kittery. Actually, some fishermen who are finding ways to do commercial harvest of green crabs. So there's a lot of work to try to figure out how to, if you can create a market for something, you can be sure that it'll get fished. So it's just trying to figure that out.
Maybe like a couple more questions and then get in the back.
Mhm.
One of the things that's going on today is so much development. And we've got people are concerned about climate change, and then they're doing all this development that actually makes climate change more impactful. How do we work with developers to help them understand that all this development is actually hurting our environment, our waterways? I know this is a huge discussion point, but of course, they're after the money part of it, but they have any interest in saving our environment and our waterways and maybe how to implement.
Can take that if you want.
Initiatives, I don't know, but it's obviously they're part of the huge problem.
Yeah.
For sure, and I think the best way to deal with this issue is to make sure that we have proper zoning and local land use ordinances and state ordinances in place, because it's just very inefficient and very difficult to work at a development scale. And, you know, I so frequently get calls from, you know, concerned residents about a development project and its impact on wetlands or shoreland and so on, and that is the case, but that it is happening, as you know, so ubiquitously and so rapidly that it's really the best way to address poor development is through better local land use rules. And that's the kind of stuff that really takes advocates to be paying attention to what's happening in their community and to understand when ordinances are being revisited, when projects are being approved that are having negative impacts, and to stand up and speak out about that. If anyone has the stomach for it, join your planning board. That is where the action is. That is I think that is the single most impactful thing people could do in their community, is become engaged in the planning board. It's a difficult, time-consuming, complicated role, but that is really where I think we can make the biggest amount of change.
What if there's any other, there probably could be other responses to that question in the room too. just
For
because,
sure.
There's probably a lot of expertise. Did you want to ask another question?
I guess two questions. One is, if you could get one law passed that would make a difference, what would it be? And the other is, how do you feel about enforcement of current laws? Is enforcement being well done, or is it a problem?
Yeah, and again, I think you might get a difference. So the question was, if you could pick one law to put into place, what would it be, and how do we feel about enforcement? I think we probably each have kind of a slightly different response to that. It might be fun to just blurt out an answer. I mean, I don't know, there's so many. I mean, the thing that comes to mind that this is sort of near and dear to our role here at GBNERR is just around buffer protection. Just, you know, kind of my response with the development is always like, figure out where you can put it and where not to put it, right? And those spaces right adjacent to our waterways and our wetlands are so critical. So stronger buffer protection would be one that's top of mind for me. Anybody else want to respond to either of the two questions?
Yeah, I mean, I have a long list of what's most important, but I think stormwater management, I'd love to see more common local and state and federal regulation around large impervious surface. If you're building a shopping mall, or you own a shopping mall or a parking lot that's in excess of whatever, an acre or something like that, it should have stormwater management baked into that project. And some of that work, you know, as we redevelop, so some of our malls that are, you know, being repurposed for multi-use and, you know, things like that, will be subject to new kinds of stormwater regulations, and that will be a very good thing. But we just can't keep paving the landscape and expect that it's not having an impact. It is, we are seeing it, we're paying that price, and it's time to really rethink, you know, how we use land.
Anything, Trevor? Are you good?
Get myself in trouble.
I know.
Yeah, I would echo that. I think that how we're using land really makes the biggest impact. And again, that's really local. Those are really local decisions, how we're zoning, having denser zoning, more multi-purpose, multi-use zoning. There's a lot of, there's really not a one answer that fits all situations, especially for all the communities, but being able to look at your community and look at what those ordinances are on the books and say, how are we doing here? And are there improvements that can be made to be able to better put aside nature while still meeting our demands when it comes to housing and development and infrastructure, all of that. So it's a really tricky one, but it really needs a lot of dedicated people to be able to stand up and say like, yep, I'm gonna get into the fray of that.
Close to the answer. Any final questions? I think we should, but we can stick around too and be available to chat.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Well, thank you,
Great.
guys. That was great.
Yeah. Big thank you to Melissa and Trevor.